There we are.
Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Lionel, for your sponsorship. Should be Ilu Neshama, your mother's Zechon Livracha. And it's nice to see everybody here this morning. Elian, nice to see you. Murray, David Fischel, the regular team, Michael Gross, Andy Baumfreund, nice to see you all. Last week, we had a look at some issues connected to Purim. And I'd like to have a look at one or two particular aspects of Purim. I'd like to start with something connected to Yerushalayim, since many of us here are Yerushalayim residents. And those who aren't wish they were. And we're proud to be a resident of Yerushalayim. We've made a lot of effort to come here and to live here. And there is an interesting connection to Yerushalayim, which I'll show you in a minute. But let me just give you a brief context here. That is, if you remember from last week's shir, I explained that there is a whole hidden dimension to Megillas Esther, which you don't get by simply reading the Megillah. And I explained that the hidden dimension you get from reading the book of Ezra. I gave you a little bit of homework. I'm not sure if anybody did their homework. I can't ask you to hand it in and get marked for it, as maybe one would normally do with homework. But if you have read a little bit of Ezra, or you listened carefully to the shir last week, you'll realize that actually the context of Megillas Esther is massively important, in the sense that it is the preamble, it is the introduction to the building of the Bayis Sheni, the building of the Second Temple, which had been halted and which looked like it was doomed. It looked like there wouldn't be a Shivat Tzion, a return to the land of Israel, and there wouldn't be a rebuilding of the Bayis Sheni because the Persian Empire ruled that part of the world, Mihodu Vad Kush, and had refused to give permission to complete the building and to settle the land of Israel. And everything was on hold, and the Jewish people were really in a very, very difficult situation, and they couldn't find their way out of it. And Megillas Esther was the key to Binyan Bayis Sheni. In a sense, the simcha of Yehudim Osaurav, a simcha of a Sasa Vikar, the simcha of the Megillah was a little bit of a feeling of Geula, that the Geula had arrived. Don't forget, getting out of Golus, back to Eretz Yisrael, and rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash, that was a step towards the Geula. So there was a moment, this was not just, when I say just, but I mean, it was, of course, primarily a genocide that had been averted, a danger to the whole nation that had been averted. But over and above that, it was something else completely. It was a green light for the Binyan Bayis Sheni and the Geula. And there's something very interesting about a connection to Yerushalayim, to the Har HaBayis, and the Geula of Purim, which I'd like to now show you, if I can. Do a little bit of screen sharing. Okay, you have to bear with me for 1 minute, just so I can get the right pictures up here. Okay, can you see a picture of Yerushalayim, right? This is a picture of the Har HaBayis. Can you see anything yet? No, not yet? Okay, what can you see? Can you just see a blank? There's no, you can't see a picture?
Screen sharing.
Is there a screen share that you can see?
No. There is something strange in your connection, Rabbi. It shows you here on my machine as you being muted, but you're not muted.
I'm not muted, no.
I know, so it's, 1 second, let me try.
You're frozen on my screen.
Well, okay.
Really?
Try again, try again. Let me try. He is frozen.
Am I frozen still on your screen?
The picture's frozen, but we hear you.
Okay, I'm going to try and do screen share again. Maybe you can get a picture here. It's so annoying that...
I think we've lost screen. I think there's something wrong with the bandwidth, and we're losing.
No, not good.
You may have to log off and log on again. Would you like to try that, Rabbi? Come in again.
Let me try a text rather than a picture. See if that works a bit better, because a picture might need more second. Can you see a text? No.
No.
Okay, I'm going to try and log off and log. I'm going to try and log off and log in again.
Started screen sharing.
What do you say?
It says you have started screen sharing. Have you really?
I have started screen sharing.
I think it may be very slow. Try logging off. Try logging off.
Yes?
Yes, log off.
Okay, so that means I leave and I come back again. Is that right?
Yes, re-click your way in the normal way.
Okay, so bear with me for 1 minute, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about this. I'm not sure.
Your bandwidth is low.
Not working properly. I'm a bit nervous to screen. Can you see any text now? Can you see a text?
No text.
Text. Oh, darn it.
I think your bandwidth is very low.
Okay, I'm going to try and log in again. You have to bear with me for 2 minutes.
Yes. I'm sorry, Chevra. This does happen every now and again. There is no alternative to having a live share, as you see. We've been taken captive by Zoom over these years and perhaps come to be over-reliant on technology. And the machine stops from time to time. Let's wait and see whether Rabbi Kimche can come in again with more bandwidth.
He obviously did log off because we see him.
I don't see him now. You're probably seeing a dead image.
Okay.
I see his name still there. Yeah. I'm wondering whether that's just frozen.
I see you. You're still on. Oh.
We're on. It's only here. I mean, I'm the host, so you're still here.
The Zoom allows many more people to join the share who couldn't get to Tim from all over the world.
Yeah. I see huge advantage as well. But every now and again, this is the first time in this series that we've had a problem. So we should be grateful.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me?
We hear you. Yeah, we do.
You hear me, but you can't see me.
At the moment.
We saw you for a minute.
Okay, I tell you what I'll do. I'll start the share, and hopefully it'll come on. It'll come online as we progress.
Okay.
He needs to unmute himself.
No, he is unmuted. There's a problem. It shows him as being unmuted.
I am unmuted.
It's a Purim gremlin.
Purim gremlin.
This is what it is.
Yeah.
This is exactly what it is.
Your bandwidth isn't allowing it.
Now I can see everybody again. So I think things are improving. Can you see me?
No, we don't see you, but we hear you very clearly. You may have to make this a radio interview.
You look very much like Ellie.
A blank. No, you have to try to do this audially rather than visually. Oh, we see you now.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure. Oh.
I think we're making progress. Yes, can you see me?
Yeah, so I mean, your flat image, really.
Take a risk. Shall we take a risk?
Try to screen share, and if it doesn't work, you'll just have to talk through it on your own.
Let's hope. Okay, bear with me for one moment. Right. Can you see a text? No text.
No text. It's not working.
It's not working.
Sorry.
Okay, maybe it'll come on in a minute. I'm going to leave the text up and I'm going to start speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, I only see you. I don't see Rabbi. I don't see the rabbi.
You, Ellie.
You have to highlight the rabbi.
I did that before. We'll try to do it again. I am trying to do that, you know.
Oh, I don't see him. I don't see him. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Do you see him? Well, I don't see him.
Yes.
I think it's just slow. I think it will come on eventually.
Okay, I have spotlighted Rabbi. It's full of gremlins today. I think Rabbi Kimche, if you can be heard, that may be where we have to rely simply on a sound.
I'll tell it to you. Maybe this is the origin of like Torah She'Ba'al Peh. That instead of having Torah She'Bichtav because the screen share didn't work, so you have to just trust me that this is actually the oral tradition, and this is I'm giving you a correct rendition of the text. What I wanted to bring a little bit to life, I wanted to connect the idea that I mentioned last week, that Purim was the foundation of the building of Bayis Sheni. And I wanted to connect that with the Har HaBayis and Yerushalayim as we know it today. Let me explain to you a little bit what I'm talking about. So some of you might be aware that the walls of Yerushalayim have got different gates in different directions, north, south, east, and west. There are different gates. And this actually is a very beautiful topic. Those of you who are knowledgeable about the archaeology and the history of the old city of Yerushalayim, it's a very fascinating topic, but that's not my topic for today. So I'm not going to go into all the gates of various sorts. I'm only going to speak about one of them. There's one gate which is generally referred to as the Shah Harachamin. Okay, the Shah Harachamin is the eastern gate. In other words, if you are standing on Har HaZeisim, if you're standing on the Mount of Olives looking at the Har HaBayit, looking at the Temple Mount, then you're looking at it from the east, and you will see one gate in the walls, which is a completely bricked up, a closed gate, and that is called Shah Harachamin, right? Well, let's put it this way: it's referred to colloquially as Shah Harachamin. In fact, one of the modern singers. I think one of the Banai singers recently made a very beautiful song about that he's walking in the old city and he can hear the Shah Harachamin calling to him. Why is the Shah Harachamin at this particular gate? Why has it got such a strong, if you like, legendary aura about it? And the answer lies in the text that I'm sharing with you, except that you can't see it, right? So I'll read it to you. It's a pasuk in Yechezkel, chapter 43. Now, Yechezkel was a Novi who was alive at the time of the Golus Bovel and the rebuilding of Yerushalayim. He wasn't actually alive during the building of the Yerushalayim, as far as I know, but he prophesied the return to Yerushalayim, and he actually also had visions of the third temple, of the base Hamikdash, which will be rebuilt from Rabbi Kimche by Mashiach. But in his vision of the rebuilding of the old city, in Yechezkel chapter 43, the pasuk says, "Vayolicheni el hashar, shara shepone derech hakodim," that in his vision, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes him to the gate which faces east. Okay, so if you can imagine the Harabayis, I've actually got a picture of it, which I wanted to share with you, an aerial picture of the Harabayis, where you saw all the different directions. But if you can imagine that the Kosel is the western wall because it's the western part, the western wall of the old city, right? If you imagine the old city as a sort of a rectangle and the Harabayis in the middle of it, and the western wall is at one side, and on the other side is the eastern wall, which faces Har HaZeisim. And this was, so it says here in Yechezkel chapter 43, that in his dream, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes him to the eastern gate, V'hinei kavod Elahei Yisrael bo miderech HaKodim. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will come and will appear into Yerushalayim from the east. V'kolo kekol mayim rabim. There was the sound of mighty roaring waters, and the light, and the whole world was lit up. In other words, this is all the dramatic part of the vision, right? Like in Har Sinai, there were kolos of rokim. So here, Yechezkel has this vision of HaKadosh Baruch Hu returning to Yerushalayim through the eastern gate. And in the opening psukim of chapter 44, he says, as the vision continued, Vayoshev Osi Derech Shah HaMikdash HaChitzon HaPoneh Kodim, and he took me back to the eastern gate, V'hu Sagur. And the Pasuk says in Yechezkel that this gate is shut, as indeed it is today. That gate is now shut, right? Incidentally, the walls of the old cities, we have them now, are not exactly the walls that were built by Ezra and Nehemiah. They weren't even the walls that were built by Herod, right? We've got lots of different archaeological levels. These walls are partly from the Byzantine era, pre the 6th century, and then partly from the Suleiman, the Muslim area, post the 6th century. But they're all built on the foundations of, if you dug down deep enough with the walls, you would come to the walls that were built earlier. So at the end of his vision, it says, Vayoma Elai Hashem. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Yechezkel, Hashar hazeh sagur yiyeh. I want this gate to remain closed. Lo yipotach v'ish lo yovabo. No one is allowed to open it or go through it. Ki Hashem Elokei Yisrael bo until HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself comes to it. And therefore it should remain shut. In other words, in Yechezkel's vision of the Beis HaMikdash, he's got a lot of details about the way the Beis HaMikdash has to be rebuilt. Right? Yechezkel is speaking after the Churban Bayis Rishon, before the building of the Bayis Sheni, and there are lots of different aspects of the Beis HaMikdash which he details. But this is one of the interesting ones, is he never calls it Shah Harachamin. I don't know what is the origin of the name Shah Harachamin, to be quite honest with you. I don't know exactly where that comes from. Homework for people who want to do a bit of research. Who invented the name Shah Harachamin and who gave it that name, I don't know. It's a beautiful name, right? But here it's referred to as a Shah HaKodim, which means the eastern gate. And the legend is, the Midrashic legend is, that when Mashiach returns to Yerushalayim, he will come through that gate, right? Eliyahu, Novi, and Mashiach, when they come to Yerushalayim, that's the gate they're going to go through. In fact, what I did find documented is that the Muslims believed that the Jewish Redeemer will come through that gate, and therefore, if you go there today, you will find that they put a Muslim cemetery all around that gate. There is not they didn't put a Muslim cemetery around any other part of the walls of the old city, but around that gate they buried a few hundred corpses on the mistaken assumption that because of the tumah, of the impurity of a Beis HaKvaros, Mashiach would not be able to come through. This was a sort of a ploy of theirs to prevent Mashiach coming in, right? What they didn't know is that first of all, Mashiach is not a Kohen, so he can go into a Beis HaKvaros. And secondly, they didn't know that the Mesim of non-Jews is not Matame. that tumah is only with the corpses of Jewish people, and not. So I think their Talmudic knowledge was slightly lacking, but the idea is very interesting. In other words, they also had this Maseira. They also had this idea that this gate is particularly important. Eventually, because of this pasuk in Yechezkel, who says that the gate remains shut until Hashem Elokei Yisrael comes and the presence of God enters through that gate. If I'm not mistaken, and this is also something I'd like you to do homework on, that when they conquered the old city in 1967, the Tzanchanim came through that gate. Yeah. They found a way to blow their way through that gate, and no one expected them to come through that gate because it's never open. Because it's locked shut, it was a bit of a surprise. Entry point into the old city of Yerushalayim, and the Tzanchanim came through that gate, which is also I find that very, very, very fascinating. I'll call upon him. What has all this got to do with Purim? What has all this got to do with Purim, and why is this interesting? So I want to tell you the answer lies in now that you've read, now that I've given you a bit of an update on the actual geography of the old city, and I've told you the pasuk in Yechezkel dating back 2,500 years, and now I want to tell you a Mishnah. There's a Mishnah in Maseches Midot. Now, Maseches Midot is very fascinating because the whole of Masechet Midot really gives us the shape and the size and the measurements of the Second Temple. It's a most magnificent document, and there's several. I have several editions, illustrated editions of Masechet Midot. It's one of the volumes of Mishnah which is very rarely studied. There is no Gemara on it. It's just facts and figures and measurements and descriptions of what the Bayis Sheni looked like. Don't forget, lots of the Mishnah was written during the Bayis Sheni. Of course, Hillel and Shammai lived during the Bayis Sheni. Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and his Talmidim, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah, these were all people who lived during the time of the Bayis Sheni. So when the Mishnah was written, they weren't talking about something in the distant past. They were actually describing something which was in front of their eyes. So we do have a real, if you like, first-hand account of the details of the Second Temple, certainly towards the end of the Second Temple period. And the Mishnah reads as follows: Chamisha sha'arim hoyu lahar habayis. There were 5 gates in the walls of the old city. There were 5 gates, and it goes through them. It goes Shar Chuldam and Adoram, etc., in and out, etc. And then it says Shar HaMizrachi, and here comes our connection to Purim, ladies and gentlemen. Shar HaMizrachi, the eastern gate, right? So the Mishnah doesn't call it Shah Harachamin. It calls it the gate facing east, which is the gate facing the Har HaZeisim. I must just tell you here as a footnote, I often see this gate and I look at it because my parents, Zichronim Lebracha, are buried on Har HaZeisim, and when I go and visit the kever, and then I look towards the west at the Har HaBayis, you can see a magnificent view of the Har HaBayis, of the Temple Mount from the Har HaZeisim, from the Mount of Olives, and what you see in the wall of the old city is only this gate. This is the Shar HaMizrachi. Says the Mishnah. Here comes the interesting point. On the gate on the eastern gate, there was a large sculptured picture above the gate on the gatehouse. And what was that picture? Says the Mishnah, Shar HaMizrachi Olov Shushan Habira Tzura. There was a picture of Shushan Habira. And this is very interesting. In other words, the people who came to build Bayis Sheni came from Shushan Habira, right? And they wanted to commemorate that fact by inscribing Shushan Habira, by making a picture, a relief, a sort of a sculptured relief, a picture of Shushan Habira, maybe some of the buildings, some of the recognizable buildings, or I'm not quite sure what was it about Shushan Habira that they depicted in this artwork, but they wanted to make a massive artwork on the eastern gate, and it was called the Shar of Shushan Habira. Right? Now there are different meforshim different Meforshim highlight different reasons why they might have done this. Right? So the simple practical reason, which is mentioned by some of the Rishonim, is they wanted to give a yashakayach, they wanted to give a nod of thanks to the Persian Empire for allowing them to build the Bayis Sheni. In other words, the Bayis Sheni was built by kind permission of His Royal Majesty, the Persian Emperor. And it was not only they not only got planning permission for it, they actually got funding for it as well. And they got a lot of military protection. The Persian Empire made the building of Bayis Sheni possible, and therefore on the Eastern Gate, they wanted to commemorate their thanks to the Persian Emperor for his endorsement, right? So that is, I think, a very straightforward and reasonable understanding of why Shushan Habira was inscribed in such a prominent way on the Har HaBayis. The second one is maybe a bit more prosaic, and that is some of the Rishonim suggest that maybe the Persian Emperor required them to put this up in order to remind them that even though they're living in Israel and they have the Beis HaMikdash, they are not a sovereign power. They have to pay taxes and they have to pay homage to the Persian Empire. So it was both a token of thanks, and it was a reminder that we are still, in a sense. So here's an interesting thing. In a sense, it was a reminder that at some level we're still in Golus, even though we're in Yerushalayim. We've got the Beis HaMikdash, but we're not sovereign. We don't have our own. Can you hear me and see me? Everything's going reasonably well. Yes, good. Thank you. As soon as you can't, give me a sign, Ellie. I can see Ellie on the screen. Just give me a sign if you can't see me. Good. So so these are the two reasons why, amazingly, and in fact this was mentioned. Those people who are Daf Yomi followers, this was mentioned just last week in Daf Pei Vov. And Daf Pei Vov and Psachim makes a passing reference to the gate of Shushan Habira, and there's a Rashi there, and there's the Meforshim there on Daf Pei Vov in Psachim, which speaks about this topic, right? But there's a third reason, and the third reason is that more than any of the other gates, this gate represented these. Through the Psukim in Yechezkel, this gate represented the ultimate Geula. In other words, this gate represented the idea that there would come the ultimate redemption would come to Yerushalayim, Uval Tzion Goyel, right? That the Goyel will come to Har Tzion, will come to Yerushalayim, and that in a sense, the builders of the Bayis Sheni. And here comes an interesting point that I wanted to share with you this morning, is that the people who built Bayis Sheni and who organized and orchestrated the whole return to Israel, as recorded in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, they knew that this wasn't the final Geula. They knew that this was not yet Mashiach. Nobody says, oh, Mashiach has arrived. Right? And the main reason why no one says Mashiach has arrived is because there was no Malchus, because they were under the sovereign rule of Persia. So Malchus Yisrael hadn't been reinstated. Right? There was a little bit of Malchus in the sense that, so Malchus has got two different meanings to it. Malchus can mean absolute sovereignty that they didn't have, but Malchus also means leadership, and leadership they did have. They had, for example, Mordechai and Esther. Right, and I think I mentioned to you last week, talking about Megillah Esther, that pay attention when you hear the Megillah, that in several places, both Mordechai and Esther are referred to as wearing Bigdei Malchus, Tilbash Esther Malchus, right? And Mordechai went through the streets and he was Levush Malchus Techeles V'chur. He's dressed in royal garb. Why would the Megillah emphasize the royalty of Esther and Mordechai? It wasn't a Jewish court. It wasn't a Jewish monarchy. They were in the court of the Persian Empire. Nevertheless, vis-a-vis the Jewish people, they were the leaders. In other words, the leadership had been restored to the Jewish people, and that was the Malchus. So coming back to the eastern gate of the Har HaBayis, please do a little bit of research on this. It's a very, very fascinating subject, this eastern gate of the Har HaBayis, which was once Shushan Habira, and now it's Shah Harachamin, and symbolized, I would say, three things. First is the thanks, a token of thanks to the Persians. Secondly, a reminder that they shouldn't think that they are sovereign yet. But thirdly, it's also in order to express the idea that the return to Yerushalayim was a little bit of a geula. It was a redemption. In other words, the besukim of Yechezkel were being not completely fulfilled because he spoke about the Messianic era, about Yemos HaMashiach. But they were fulfilled. They were fulfilled to the extent. Can you see now anything?
Yes.
You can see some text?
Yes, the text is there now.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so you see? So here, we learn from this that you first do Torah Shebaal Peh, and then you get the Torah Shebichtav. That's what we learned from this particular exercise. So you can see here in Yechezkel chapter 43, I just want to show you very briefly, because I've already explained it to you, that Yechezkel chapter 43 speaks about the Sha'ar Asher Poneh Derech Kodim. That is the eastern, the gate of the Har HaBayis, which faces east, which means it faces East Jerusalem. It faces the Jordan River. It faces Har HaZeisim. And then here it says, "V'hinei kavod Hashem elokei Yisrael bo," right? Miderech hakodim. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu will appear there from the east, right? And that and the Makolo Kakol Mayim Rabim, and with the sound of great waters, Va'oretz ha'ira mikvoda, and the light of the world. And then he says here in chapter 44, he says, "Vayom Hashem Elai, Hashem shashar hazeh sagur lo yipotach." Right, we're not going to open this gate. Ish lo yovabo ki Hashem Elokei Yisrael bo bo. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu will come there, sagur, and it's on the basis of this that the legend is that Mashiach, when he comes, will come through this particular gate. But as I say, in 1967, there was a little, if you like, a precursor to Eliyahu Hanavi and the Mashiach, which were the Tzanchanim of Moshe Dayan Tzanchanim, came in from the east unexpectedly in order to capture Yerushalayim. Let's see if I can get the picture that I wanted to get before. Second. Let me just see.
Yeah.
Is there a picture coming up?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, let's see if I can get the whole picture. Let me see if I can get the whole picture. Okay. Maybe now. Okay, I'm not quite sure how this is working out. Okay, so this is not doing very well. Okay. Second.
Very slow.
Should be a picture coming through here. It's unfolding, is it? The picture's unfolding?
Yes, slowly.
Okay. I'm afraid this morning everything's a little bit slowly. Okay, so we're having here a sort of a bird's eye picture of the Har HaBayis. Can you see that?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, you can see that now. So, so if you look over here, for example, this is the Kotel, right? This is you'll recognize that. This is the western wall. This is the plaza of the western wall, and that's on the west. Okay, so we are looking at it from the south. This is the southern. This is the southern entrance, where there have been all sorts of archaeological digs recently. But over here, this is the eastern gate. Can you see that? This outside of it is the Muslim cemetery.
Yeah.
Can you see that? This is the Muslim cemetery built around the eastern gate, and you can see it's the eastern gate. It faces towards the east. And this was the gate of Shushan Habira. But on this gate was depicted the origin of Shushan Habira and the Purim story. Okay, this is okay. Okay, I'm not going to. Can see here that we have to be thankful that we got any sort of picture at all. But I just wanted to give you a bit of an image. Next time you go to the old city and you drive around it, try and look out for the Shah Harachamin and the gate facing the east, and bear in mind that there's a special Purim connection to that part of Yerushalayim. And it emphasizes the point that I made last week. I wanted to show you sort of a tangible expression of the point I made last week, that the whole of Megillas Esther was really the foundations of Bayis Sheni, that laid the foundations for Bayis Sheni to come into being, to get rid of Achashverosh, who was the main problem, who stopped the building of the Beis HaMikdash and didn't permit it to be built, and enabled Darius II to come onto the throne and then get permission and funding and protection to rebuild it. So the whole of the Shivas Tzia really was triggered off by the Purim story. Let's move on a little bit to another issue, which I'd like to have a look at. Just 1 second. Get a different text up here. Good, I'm pleased that picture at least came out in the end. Okay, we got that. Okay. Right. Can you see a text?
Yes.
Yes? Excellent. Good. Okay. Just a very brief reminder and a bit of an insight into Purim. Okay, so Purim is coming up, please God. We're going to be reading the Megillah on Thursday evening. Right, in 2 days' time, on Thursday evening, we're reading the Megillah, and unusually, both around the world and in Yerushalayim, Shushan Purim, everybody's going to be, the whole of Klal Yisrael will be reading the Megillah on Thursday night, unlike a usual year where Shushan Purim is the next day. But this year, because it falls on Shabbos, Shushan Purim falls on Shabbos, everybody reads the Megillah Thursday night. If you can't get to shul, you have to try and make sure that somebody in your building or somebody nearby, as far as I understand, there are lots and lots of Megillah readings that are being made available in various houses and on the streets and in public, because there's a mitzvah, a chiyuv, to hear the Megillah both on Thursday evening and on Friday morning. So the first mitzvah is Kriyas Megillah. The second mitzvah is Mishteh V'Simcha, the celebratory feast, right? Incidentally, the mitzvah of Purim, unlike that of Shabbos and Yom Tov. Shabbos and Yom Tov, we refer to the meals as a seudah, right? Sholas Sudas, right? The mitzvah of having a seudah, which means a very satisfying meal. Samach ayin dalad means very satisfying, right? On Purim, it isn't referred to as a seudah, it's referred to as a mishteh. So mishteh also means a feast, but mishteh, the emphasis is on lishtot, the emphasis is on drinking. So it's actually, it's not essential. The important part of the meal is the merrymaking and the celebration and the drinking. And so the Seudah in Yerushalayim this year, we're not going to have on Friday. We're going to have that on Sunday. Right? So we spread Purim over 3 days. Friday is Megillas Esther and also Matanos Le'Evyonim. On Friday, we read the Megillah and we give supporting the poor, which is mitzvah number 4. And on Sunday, we do the Mishteh and mitzvah number 3, which is Mishlach Monos. That's how we do it. And on Shabbos, we say Al Hanisim. So actually, it's spread out over 3 days this year. And those people who are machmir remain drunk for 3 days. There's a special mitzvah to be drunk for 3 days, which I don't recommend. I don't recommend it even for half an hour, but there it is. Okay, well, I wanted to show you something interesting about these 4 mitzvahs. Bear in mind that these 4 mitzvahs were designed by Chazal. In other words, this is not a mitzvah min haTorah. This was designed by Mordechai and Esther and the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. Mordechai was a member of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, that illustrious group of Rabbonim over a couple of centuries who bridged the first temple with the Bais Sheni. During that period, there was the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. Mordechai was a member. The last of the Nevi'im, Chagai, Zachariah, Malachi, were also members of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, as was Doniel. Doniel is also around at this point in time. That's another whole separate story about the hidden role of Doniel in Megillas Esther. Al Kolponim, the way in which Chazal designed this Yom Tov, so it was designed with a lot of care and attention. Why did they give us 4 mitzvahs? What do these 4 mitzvahs represent? And here comes a very interesting insight into Purim. I'm following here the writings of Rav Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin and various other of the Gedolei HaChasidus who are writing based on more mystical, Kabbalistic sources. So they say that actually these 4 mitzvahs represent 4 dimensions of Jewish life, right? And these 4 dimensions are really derived from a deep understanding of Kriyas Shema, as I'll show you in 1 minute, right? The first paragraph of Kriyas Shema contains within it 4 different dimensions of the way we relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this was used as a sort of a template, a structural format on which the mitzvahs of Purim were legislated. So I want to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So if you have a look here, right, you've got the text, you can see the text? Yes? Yeah. So these are the 4 mitzvahs. So I want you to pay attention. What I've done is I've divided up the Shema in the following way. The first pasuk, right, Shema Yisrael, and Baruch Shem, which isn't the pasuk at all, doesn't appear anywhere in the Tanakh. It's a separate story. I'm not going to go into that for the moment because time's a bit short. But Shema Yisrael, so Chazal understood, is a mitzvah of thought. In other words, to have in your mind a clarity of Hashem Echad, the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And these large letters, right, the letter Ayin at the beginning and Dalad at the end, have got two different meanings in Hebrew. One meaning is Ayin Dalad, which means an aid, which means to give testimony, to declare something to be true. That's what an aid has to do, to declare something to be true. And also Ayin Dalad, if you reverse the order, is Dalad Ayin, which means Da, which means knowledge. So the whole of the first pasuk of the Shema emphasizes the use of our mind to get the knowledge and the clarity of Hashem Echad, of the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even though it seems to us there are lots of other forces in this world. If we open our eyes, we think there's the forces of nature and the forces of politics and the forces of the economics and all sorts of different military forces in this world. But Hashem Echad means there is really only one guiding force, and everything else is subject to the Hashem Echad, the Ein Oid Milvado. There is no other power, there's no independent powers in the world other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the foundational idea of Jewish life. That's in the mind. What happens after that is that we progress from the moyach to the leiv. We progress from the mind to the heart. We're no longer talking about da, about edus. We're talking about v'ohavta, ahava. We're talking about passion. V'ohavta es Hashem elokecha, with your whole b'chol levavcha, right? To love HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chol levavcha, with your whole heart. That's no longer in your mind. That's not an idea anymore. That is a passionate emotion. That is the leiv of a person. So we've moved from the mind to the heart, right? And not only a love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but also v'hoyu advorim ha'ileh, asher anochi mitzavcha hayom alav avecha. Also these words, what words are we talking about? The words of the Torah should be on your heart. In other words, not only a love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but a love of Torah, a love of the beauty of Torah, the truth of the Torah, the depth of the Torah. But these two psukim are dealing not with ideas, but with the leiv. Al levavcha, mentioned twice, right? Once in b'chol levavcha and then al levavcha, meaning that having clarified in your mind the truth, now we need to engage our feelings, our emotions. And then the next pasuk is v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam, right? And that is the activity of teaching. If we have time, we'll say a bit more about that in a moment. To speak and teach. It's not good enough just to love the Torah. You have the dibarta bam. You have to speak about it and teach it to your children or to anybody else who you are able to teach, right? And put your tefillin on. So here, the third stage is physical actions. Tefillin is physical actions. How to tie something onto your arm and onto your head. How to, in some way, use your hands, use your body, right, in Avodas Hashem, right? B'shinantam levanecha is using your mouth and your speech, right? That's the primary human, if you like, physical activity is speech and teaching, and the second is physical. So basically, we've progressed from the idea from the mind to the heart to the body. That tefillin represents represents. Say Chazal, kedushat haguf, the idea that we can consecrate not just our mind to have beautiful ideas, and not just our heart to have the correct passions, but even our body, we can use it l'shem mitzvah, and the body itself becomes kodesh. We're able to transform the human body into something of kedusha, right? And therefore the body becomes a chefza shel mitzvah. Right? Becomes something, if you put the Shem Hashem, just like, and that's indeed why we're so particular about Chevra Kadisha and Kovod HaMeis, because even after the Neshama has left the mace, but the mace still remains, the Kedusha that has been imprinted into the body still remains, right? And that it has been a vessel for the Neshama, and it has absorbed the Kedusha of the mitzvahs, and because you've used it in order to perform mitzvahs. And the last one is Uchsaftam al mezuzos, the mezuzah on your home. So your home is not your mind, and it's not your heart, and it's not your body. It's a fourth dimension. The fourth dimension are your possessions. How to use your possessions wisely. How to use your assets, all material assets that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has blessed us with, how to use them also only for Kavod Shamayim. So we have here a progression that I want to share with you. Next time you're reading the Shema, bear this in mind, that we're actually progressing, and I've written here somewhere what this progression is. This is the progression. The progression is first is the Shema, which is the mind, and then is B'chol Levavcha, which is the heart, the emotions, and then there is the Tefillin, which is the actions and the body, and then there is the mezuzah on your home, right? The possessions. This is the if you like, the pattern of ideas which the Torah gives us in Shema. And we all know that the Shema is, in many ways, the foundational tefillah and the foundational affirmation of Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shemayim is in the Kriya Shema. When Chazal came along to give us, so let's go back now to the 4 mitzvahs of Purim. I just want to join up the dots for you in a minute. So Kriyas HaMegillah is in the mind, is giving you the ideas, hearing the text and thinking about the hashgacha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the tshuva of Klal Yisrael and the fasting and the davening and the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu protected Klal Yisrael in Galus. That idea is the Megillah. The next thing is Mishteh B'Simcha. So that's not just an idea, that is celebration, that's the leiv, that is the passions, that's the heart of a person to, that is the ruach, if you like. That is the way in which, if you have a Purim Suda, it's got to have a ruach to it, it's got to have a passion, and it's got to have some simcha to it. I know incidentally that this year it's going to be a bit more difficult, as it was indeed last year Purim. Nevertheless, even if you only have a few people at your Purim Suda, not too many, it's important to try and create a little bit of a ruach, a little bit of a simcha, because that is the mitzvah of the Mishteh B'Simcha. And then there is Mishlach Manos. So Mishlach Manos is already in the field of actions. You've got to prepare the Mishlach Manos, you've got to deliver them, you've got to interact with people, the interaction with people, and the physical gifting to other people, presents out of friendship, and that is the mitzvah of the guf, right? And what you're giving them also is food, right? You don't give somebody Mishlach Manos, you don't give them a book for Mishlach Manos, or you don't give him, right? You give somebody food because it's a mitzvah of the guf. So the Megillah is the mitzvah of the moyach, of the mind. The Mishteh is the mitzvah of the heart. Mishlach Manos is the mitzvah of the guf, and Matanos Le'evyonim is how to use your possessions wisely, to know how to distribute your wealth to those people in need, and share one's wealth with aniyim. That is, incidentally, Matanos Le'evyonim, this year, because of COVID, it's going to be a bit difficult, Matanos Le'evyonim, because you're probably not going to meet many of Yonim on Purim, and they're not going to come around collecting. So here's the story, ladies and gentlemen. Again, you have to do your homework before Purim starts. You have to get online and look for some suitable cause, which is Matanos Le'evyonim, and you will find there are organizations which tell you that if you donate to them, they will distribute it on Purim. Right? You need somebody who will be your shaliach to distribute on Purim money to the poor. Incidentally, I just want to mention, I think, I don't know if I mentioned it before this year, people often make a bit of a mistake about giving tzedakah. Giving tzedakah is, in essence, helping people who are struggling to put food on the table and to clothe themselves and to survive. That's the aniyim. That's got nothing to do with the other charitable donations we make, which are to support the shul and to support the school and to support the universities and to support the tzahar, all sorts of things that we do, right? You might give money, I don't know, to Yad Vashem or to Shari Tzedek, or you might give money to a yeshiva, and all that's admirable, right? But that's not tzedakah. Just you should know that. It's important to know that. That is supporting the institutions of Klal Yisrael. And we find that actually in these Parshas HaShavua that we're reading at the moment, when Moshe Rabbeinu says teruma, collects from everybody a teruma, a contribution to what? Moshe Rabbeinu is collecting zav, kesef, and achoshes. What's he collecting for? He's not collecting for aniyim. This is not tzedakah. He's collecting to build the Mishkan. Are you following me? So in every generation, there is a Mishkan to build, meaning there are certain institutions which hold the community together spiritually. The shuls and the schools and the yeshivas and the seminaries and all the different organizations which are vital to us, but that's not Matanos Le'evyonim. It's important to know. You can't be Yotze, the mitzvah of Matanos Le'evyonim and Purim, by donating to a yeshiva or donating to a shul, right? You have to donate to a niyam. Has to go preferably something like a soup kitchen, or there are organizations. It won't be difficult if you type in online Matanos Le'evyonim. You'll get dozens of people who are preferably find somebody reliable, of course, but there are people around who will be your shliach to give Matanos Le'evyonim, and Matanos Le'evyonim is given on Friday, both in Yerushalayim and around the world. Everybody gives Matanos Le'evyonim, because I'll say that's connected to the mitzvah of Kriyas Megillah. So Kriyas Megillah goes together with Matanos Le'evyonim, and the Seudah goes together with B'Shlach Manos on Sunday. And on Shabbos, all we do is we say Al Anissim in Yerushalayim. We say Al Anissim in Yerushalayim on Shabbos, and we also lane the Parshas Amalek from Beshalach on Shabbos. So basically, we divide up the Purim activities over 3 days. But I wanted to show you that there is a deeper, if you like, meaning, a deeper understanding to these 4 mitzvahs. These 4 mitzvahs represent the 4 dimensions of how we stand before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We stand before HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a clear mind, with a joyful heart, using our body only for mitzvahs, and distributing our possessions only wisely, using them l'shem shamayim. And that is really, in a sense, a nutshell. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I wanted to share with you the significance of Purim in the Bayis Sheni, and the fact that it was inscribed and carved on the Eastern Gate, and that the Eastern Gate represents the Geula, the ultimate Geula of Yerushalayim. And that was, if you like, the Purim was the first step. It wasn't the complete Geula, but it was the first step towards Geula. A little bit like Medinat Yisrael is not the complete Geula, right? The state of Israel is not a complete Geula, but it's a step in the right direction. It's a step towards the Geula. And in that sense, I personally feel, when I read the book of Ezra and Nehemiah and I read about Shivas Tzion, in the 20th and 21st century, one can identify with the return to Israel and all the problems involved. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. And I want to wish you all a Purim Sameach. Stay safe, be careful, but have a lovely Purim. Enjoy it. And next time you drive around the old city.
Oh, I've unmuted you. I've muted you, Rabbi.
When you drive around the old city, wave to the Shah Harachamin, spare a thought for Shushan Habira. And please God, we will have a wonderful Purim. And please God, next year Purim, it'll be a regular Purim with thousands of people milling around and packed out shuls and big Purim and the